It was supposed to be just another lonely night, but then he walked into my room. The silence was heavy, the moonlight spilling across the floor, and before I could even speak, I felt it, his lips grazing my neck. My entire body froze, breath caught somewhere between fear and desire. I wasn't ready for what that touch would awaken in me. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew myself. But that single kiss changed everything. Gay romance, forbidden attraction, late-night confessions, and the kind of love that steals your breath away. This is not just a story, it's a memory I can never erase. The night was quiet in the kind of way that presses down on your chest. Not a single car passed by on the dirt road outside, not a single dog barked in the distance, not even the trees moved against the sky. My cabin was drowned in silence, lit only by the faint glow of embers that still pulsed in the fireplace, throwing soft light against the wooden walls. I had grown used to that silence, maybe even depended on it. Out here, I could be invisible. Out here, I could keep my secrets. But that night, everything changed. I had been lying awake on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling beams, replaying the same questions in my head. What am I doing with my life? Why does loneliness feel safer than love? My body begged for rest, but my thoughts never obeyed. That's when I heard it, soft, careful footsteps. At first, I thought I imagined it. Out here in the woods, miles away from town, visitors didn't just appear in the dead of night. But the sound came again. A board near the door gave a low groan. My chest tightened. The door creaked open, and a thin spill of moonlight cut across the room. He stepped inside. I could barely see him at first, just the outline of broad shoulders, damp hair, and clothes clinging to his body as if he had run through the night rain. My heart jolted when recognition finally settled in. It was him. The one I thought I had left behind in the noise of town, the one whose smile haunted my dreams even when I begged it to leave me alone. His eyes found mine instantly, even in the dark. They were wide, unsure, but shining with something raw. He didn't speak. He only stood there, dripping quietly onto the wooden floor, chest rising and falling as if every breath was a battle. I sat up, my pulse thrumming in my ears. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, though part of me was terrified to hear the answer. He didn't move. Didn't explain. He simply crossed the room, each step slow, deliberate, until the air between us disappeared. My throat tightened. I could smell the rain on his skin, the faint trace of soap from hours ago, and something else, something that belonged only to him. "Why?" I asked again, but this time the word caught in my throat. His hand brushed against mine. Just a touch, but it sent a shock through me so strong that my whole body stiffened. For weeks I had trained myself to stay distant, to lock away every feeling I couldn't handle. But with that single brush of his fingers, the lock shattered. Before I could retreat, before I could even think, he leaned down. And then it happened. His lips touched my neck. It was barely more than a ghost of a kiss, gentle, trembling, uncertain. But the moment his mouth found my skin, my breath collapsed in my chest. My body froze, my lungs refusing to obey, as if every nerve had been set on fire. The world fell away. There was no cabin, no past, no fear. Just him. Just me. Just that single touch. I felt myself clutching the blanket, torn between pushing him away and pulling him closer. His breath was warm, shaky, as if he was just as terrified as I was. And yet he stayed there, lips lingering for one impossible heartbeat too long, as if he wanted me to know that it wasn't an accident. When he finally pulled back, the room felt colder. I forced a breath into my lungs, sharp and broken. My voice cracked when I whispered, "You can't just." I had to, he cut in softly, his words shaking like the rest of him. His hand was still close to mine, fingers trembling. I couldn't stay away anymore. I stared at him, my chest tight with everything I wanted to say and everything I was too afraid to admit. Because the truth was, I had felt the same. Every night I spent in this cabin, every quiet hour where I pretended I didn't miss him, I had been lying to myself. And now, here he was, breaking into my silence, tearing down the walls I thought would keep me safe. The fire cracked in the hearth, a faint reminder that time was still moving, that reality hadn't stopped just because he had touched me. But I couldn't go back to the way things were before. Not after that kiss. Not after the way my body betrayed me, shivering for more even as my mind screamed to stop. He looked at me with eyes that begged for something I wasn't sure I could give. And I knew, right then, that the night had only just begun. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that nothing in me would ever be the same again. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The cabin seemed to shrink around us, walls pressing closer, firelight flickering as though it too was caught in the weight of silence. His presence was overwhelming, his damp clothes clinging to him, his breath still uneven, his eyes unflinching on mine. I wanted to ask 100 questions, but none of them would leave my lips. Instead, I just stared at him, torn between fear and longing. Why here? I finally managed, my voice little more than a whisper. Why now? He looked down, as though searching for words on the worn floorboards. Because I couldn't stand not knowing anymore, he murmured, almost ashamed of the confession. I couldn't stand the silence. The silence. The word stung. He didn't know how much I had hidden behind it, how much I had relied on it to keep myself from falling apart. Out here in this cabin, I thought I was safe from temptation, safe from wanting things I couldn't have. But here he was, shattering it with one stolen kiss. He reached up slowly, as though afraid I might run, and tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear. The gentleness of the gesture undid me. My chest heaved as I tried to keep my composure, but my body betrayed me with every shiver that rippled through me. You shouldn't have come, I said, but the words trembled, unconvincing even to myself. I know. His eyes lifted to mine again, and I saw it clearly, fear and desire, tangled together. But I had to. The embers cracked behind us, the sound sharp in the stillness. His gaze lingered on me, drinking me in as though I might disappear. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel invisible. I stood, my legs shaky, and took a step back toward the small wooden table near the fire. I needed space, needed air, needed something that wasn't him. But he followed, not touching, just hovering close enough that the warmth of his body brushed against mine. Do you know what you're doing? I asked, forcing my voice into something steadier than I felt. He swallowed hard. No. Do you? I didn't. That was the terrifying part. I had always thought I was strong enough to keep my heart caged, but the way his lips had lingered on my neck had already torn down half the bars. I turned my head away, afraid of what he might see in my eyes. He stepped closer, his voice lower now, rough with emotion. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm not here to hurt you. I couldn't keep pretending. Something inside me cracked at those words. My chest ached with the weight of everything I had refused to admit. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I didn't feel the same. But the lie stuck in my throat. Instead, I said nothing. His hand brushed mine again, fingertips trembling as if asking permission. I should have pulled away. I should have stopped him. But I didn't. My fingers curled instinctively, catching against his. The contact was electric, sending a rush through me that left me lightheaded. Do you feel it too? He whispered. I closed my eyes, because looking at him was too much. My silence was answer enough. The fire gave another sharp pop, and I flinched, pulling back just enough to put space between us again. My heart hammered against my ribs, desperate to escape. This isn't simple, I said, my voice breaking. I know. His reply came quick, almost desperate. Nothing about you is simple. But I don't care. I turned then, meeting his gaze fully, and what I saw there scared me. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was honest. Because it reflected everything I had buried deep inside me. The rain had left droplets glistening in his hair, and the faint shimmer made him look almost unreal, like something conjured from my own restless longing. He stood there, waiting for me to decide, waiting for me to either send him away or let him stay. And the truth was, I didn't know which one I wanted more. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling against my knees. He remained where he was, giving me the smallest illusion of space, though his entire body leaned toward mine as if he couldn't resist. Finally, I found my voice. You don't know what you're asking of me. He shook his head. I'm not asking for anything. A pause. Just, don't send me away. Not tonight. The plea in his words unraveled something deep inside me. My chest felt too tight, my throat raw. I wanted to say no, to remind us both of the danger, the consequences, the impossibility of this. But all I could do was nod faintly. Relief washed over his face, softening every tense line. He crossed the last bit of space between us and knelt down in front of me, his hands resting lightly on my knees. My breath hitched as his eyes searched mine, looking for something, permission, maybe. Can I stay? He asked, his voice barely audible. I swallowed hard, my whole body trembling under his touch. Yes, I whispered. The word was my undoing. He leaned forward slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. I couldn't. When his forehead pressed gently against mine, a shiver tore through me. His breath mingled with mine, ragged, unsure. We stayed like that for what felt like forever, two broken souls holding on to each other in the dark, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever fragile thing had just been born between us. And in that stillness, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing about this night would leave me unchanged. He stayed kneeling in front of me, his forehead resting against mine, as if moving even an inch might shatter the fragile spell between us. The fire behind him had nearly died, leaving the cabin soaked in shadows and moonlight. I could feel every tremor in his hands where they rested lightly on my knees, as though he was holding himself back with every ounce of willpower he had. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart raced too wildly, my breath too shallow. I had let him stay, and that single decision now hung in the air between us, heavy and irreversible. When he finally pulled back just enough to look at me, his eyes were softer, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen. "I don't know what happens next," he whispered. "Neither do I admitted, my voice breaking. A silence stretched, not empty but alive, like the pause between a lightning strike and the thunder that follows. His gaze dropped briefly to my lips, then quickly away, as though he had betrayed himself. My stomach flipped, heat rising in my chest. "You're shaking," he said, almost gently. "So are you." That brought the faintest smile to his face, and for a second, the tension eased. But then his expression turned serious again. "I don't want to ruin this," he said. "I don't want to ruin you." I reached for courage I didn't know I had and whispered back, "You're not ruining me. You're just showing me I'm alive." The words surprised even me, but they were true. For so long, I had lived behind walls, hidden from touch, from risk, from love. And here he was, breaking through with nothing more than a kiss on my neck and the sound of my name in his voice. His thumb brushed against my knee, feather-light, sending another shiver through me. "You don't know how long I've wanted this," he murmured. I looked at him sharply, my chest tightening. "And you don't know how long I've been afraid of it." His eyes met mine again, steady this time, unwavering. "Then maybe we're both exactly where we're supposed to be." The words sank into me, warm and dangerous. Part of me wanted to believe him, to surrender fully to the gravity pulling us together. Another part screamed that I was standing at the edge of a cliff. I drew in a shaky breath. If I let this happen, there's no going back. His lips curved faintly, though his eyes were serious. "Then don't go back. Don't run." The desperation in his tone cracked something inside me. Without thinking, I lifted a hand and touched his face. His skin was cool from the rain, his jaw tense under my fingertips. He closed his eyes at the contact, leaning into my touch as though he'd been starved for it. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. No rules, no fear, no consequences, just the two of us in a quiet cabin, holding onto each other like it was the only thing that mattered. He stood slowly, never breaking my gaze, and sat beside me on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under his weight, bringing us shoulder to shoulder. Our breaths mingled in the narrow space, and every brush of his arm against mine sent sparks skittering through me. The urge to lean into him was unbearable. My body ached with it, but I stayed frozen, trapped between caution and craving. Then he moved first. His hand found mine on the blanket, fingers slipping gently between my own. His grip was hesitant, almost questioning, but the warmth of it undid me completely. I exhaled sharply, my resistance unraveling thread by thread. When I turned toward him, our faces were only inches apart. The fire had dimmed to a faint glow, but the moonlight caught his features, the curve of his cheekbone, the tremble in his lips, the fierce tenderness in his eyes. I didn't realize I was leaning closer until I felt the warmth of his breath against my mouth. For one heartbeat, everything stopped. And then, his lips brushed mine. It wasn't a kiss, not fully. Just a fleeting, trembling touch, as if he was asking a question only I could answer. My chest heaved, and before I could stop myself, I answered. I pressed back, just enough. Enough to feel him, enough to admit what I'd been hiding, enough to let him know I wanted this too. The kiss was fragile, tentative, like the first crack of sunlight after a long storm. But it was also undeniable. My whole body shuddered as the truth settled over me. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. When we pulled back, his forehead rested against mine again, both of us breathing hard as though the smallest kiss had taken all the air from the room. "I've imagined this," he confessed, his voice breaking. "But nothing feels like this." My throat was too tight to reply. Instead, I squeezed his hand, grounding myself in the solid weight of him beside me. The fire finally died, plunging the cabin into near darkness, but I didn't care. The warmth I felt had nothing to do with flames. We lay back eventually, not saying much, just staying close, hands still locked together under the blanket. Every now and then, his thumb traced small circles against my skin, and each time it felt like a promise he was too afraid to put into words. As sleep finally pulled at me, one thought echoed in my mind. His lips had touched my neck, and then my mouth, and nothing in my life would ever be the same. Morning came too quickly. The cabin, once wrapped in shadows and silence, was now filled with the thin gray light of dawn slipping between the wooden shutters. The fire had died completely, leaving only the smell of ash lingering in the air. I woke slowly, disoriented, my body heavy with the warmth of sleep I hadn't expected to find. Then I felt it, his hand, still clasped in mine. The memory of last night came rushing back, the kiss on my neck, the trembling lips against mine, the way we'd finally surrendered to what we had both been denying. My chest tightened as I turned my head slightly. He was still there, stretched beside me on the narrow bed, his dark hair falling across his forehead, his face soft and unguarded in sleep. For one fragile moment, I allowed myself to simply look at him, to memorize the curve of his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. He looked so young, so breakable. And God help me, so beautiful. But then the other thoughts came, uninvited and cruel. What have you done? What happens now? What will the world say if they ever find out? I pulled my hand free gently, sitting up on the edge of the bed. My heart was already racing, a storm of panic threatening to undo the fragile calm of the night before. He stirred faintly at the loss of contact, a soft sound escaping his throat, and I nearly reached for him again. Nearly. But I didn't. I stood, pacing quietly across the creaking floorboards. Every inch of this cabin suddenly felt too small, too confining, as though the walls had closed in to trap me with my choices. The weight of the silence pressed down, thicker now, suffocating instead of comforting. Behind me, he shifted awake. "You're up," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. I didn't turn. "It's morning." He sat up, rubbing his eyes, his expression soft and unguarded. "I know." The casualness of his tone nearly broke me. How could he sound so calm, so sure, when my insides felt like they were unraveling? I forced myself to look at him then, and what I saw only made the panic worse. His eyes were steady, searching mine, as though he already knew the battle raging inside me. "Last night," I started, my throat tight. He waited, patient, though I could see the faint flicker of nerves in the way his hands twisted together. "It can't happen again," I finished, my voice sharper than I intended. The words landed between us like a blade. I saw the way his expression faltered, the way the light dimmed in his eyes, though he tried to hide it. I thought. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "You kissed me back." "I know," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I know I did. But that doesn't make it right." He stood abruptly, the mattress groaning at his movement. "Right? What does right even mean anymore?" His voice shook, not with anger but with raw desperation. "We've been lying to ourselves for so long. Don't you dare tell me it didn't mean anything." I winced, because he was right. It had meant everything. That kiss had cracked open something inside me I couldn't ignore. But admitting it felt dangerous. Dangerous in ways neither of us could fully name. "People wouldn't understand," I said, my voice low. "They'd." "I don't care about people," he snapped, then softened immediately, his voice breaking. "I only care about you." The words hit me like a blow. For weeks, maybe months, I had dreamed of hearing him say something like that. But now that he had, I felt nothing but terror. "You don't know what you're saying," I muttered, turning away from him. "You think this is some story, some escape. But it isn't. It's real, and real things break." He moved closer, refusing to let the distance stand. "Then let it break. Let it hurt. At least it will be honest." I squeezed my eyes shut, my breath shaking. His hand hovered near mine, not daring to touch, but I felt the pull of it all the same. "You think I haven't wanted this too?" I whispered harshly. "You think I don't lie awake every night wishing?" My voice cracked, and I turned away again, fists clenched at my sides. But wishing doesn't make it safe. The silence that followed was heavy, laced with everything unsaid. Finally, he spoke, softer now. "I'm not asking for safe. I'm asking for real." I turned then, and the look in his eyes nearly undid me. There was no anger there, no accusation, only longing, raw and unguarded. It scared me more than any threat ever could. I forced my voice into steel. "You should go." The words hung in the air, unforgiving. His face fell, the hurt clear even as he tried to mask it. He stepped back slowly, nodding once. "If that's what you really want." My chest ached as though something inside me had cracked. "It's for the best." He lingered for a moment, his gaze locked on mine, as if searching for any sign that I didn't mean it. But I held steady, even as my inside screamed. Finally, he nodded again and turned toward the door. His steps were heavy, reluctant, each one echoing in the cabin like a drumbeat of loss. When the door creaked open, a rush of cool morning air swept in, filling the space between us. He paused on the threshold, his back to me. For a moment, I thought he might turn back, say something, fight harder. But he didn't. He stepped outside, and the door closed softly behind him. The silence that followed was unbearable. I sank back onto the bed, burying my face in my hands, my chest heaving. Last night, his lips had touched my neck, his kiss had stolen my breath. And now the space where he had been felt emptier than it ever had before. The next days passed like a blur. I threw myself into routines, into small meaningless tasks, anything to keep from thinking about him. I chopped wood, carried water from the stream, scrubbed dishes until my knuckles turned raw. But no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't wash away the memory of his lips on my neck, the sound of his voice breaking when I told him to go. Every night, the bed felt colder. I would lie there in the silence, my hand unconsciously reaching for the space where he had been, only to find it empty. Sleep never came easily. Instead, I replayed the moment over and over, the flicker of hurt in his eyes, the way he paused at the door as if hoping I'd call him back. I never did. But God, how I wanted to. The world outside the cabin wasn't blind. Whispers carried faster than the wind, and though no one said anything directly, I saw the way eyes lingered a little too long, the way questions hovered in the air, unasked but heavy. Maybe it was just my paranoia, but I felt exposed, as though everyone knew what had happened, as though the mark of his kiss still burned on my skin. So I kept my head down, answered questions with half smiles, pretended everything was normal. Inside, though, nothing was normal. Then came the night I saw him again. I hadn't expected it, hadn't prepared myself. I was walking back from the edge of the woods, carrying a lantern, when I caught sight of him by the lake. The water reflected moonlight in silver streaks, and he stood there alone, skipping stones across the surface. His shoulders were tense, his posture stiff. For a moment, I froze. I could have turned back, slipped away quietly before he noticed me. But some force stronger than pride, stronger than fear, held me in place. He must have felt it too, because he turned, and our eyes met across the distance. The silence stretched. My throat was dry, my palms sweating around the lantern's handle. He didn't move, didn't call out, just stood there, watching me as though daring me to come closer. And against all logic, I did. Step by step, I crossed the grass until I stood only a few feet away. The air between us felt alive, charged with everything we hadn't said since that morning. "Hi," he said finally, his voice low, cautious. "Hi," I echoed, my own voice rougher than I intended. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The ache in my chest grew heavier, but I forced myself to speak first. "How have you been?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "That's what you want to ask me?" His words cut sharper than any blade. "After what happened, after you pushed me away, that's all you have?" I flinched. "I didn't mean." "Yes, you did," he interrupted, stepping closer, his eyes burning with something between anger and heartbreak. "You meant every word. You told me it couldn't happen again. That it wasn't right. That I should go." My breath caught. Hearing it out loud like that made the wound feel fresh again. "I was scared," I admitted softly. "I still am." "Of what?" His voice cracked, though he tried to keep it steady. "Of me?" I shook my head quickly. "Never of you. Of everything else. Of what happens if people find out. Of losing everything we've built." He stared at me for a long moment, then dropped his gaze to the ground. His shoulders slumped. "You don't get it, do you? I already lost something. I lost you." My chest ached at the words. Instinctively, I reached out, fingers brushing against his arm before I pulled back. The brief contact was electric, dangerous. "I haven't stopped thinking about you," I whispered, my voice trembling. His head snapped up, his eyes wide. "Then why are you punishing both of us?" I had no answer. The silence that followed was unbearable. Finally, he turned back to the lake, tossing another stone into the water. It skipped once, twice, then sank. "You think you're protecting me," he said quietly, his back still to me. "But all you're doing is breaking me." His words lodged in my chest like glass shards. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was doing the right thing. But the truth was, I wasn't even sure anymore. Every night without him felt like a slow unraveling, a quiet death. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted, my voice cracking. He turned, finally, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Then let me show you. Just, let me love you, even if it's messy. Even if it's dangerous. Please." The plea in his voice nearly shattered what little resolve I had left. My body screamed to close the distance, to hold him, to undo the damage with a single kiss. But my mind, the part of me still tethered to fear, pulled me back. "I can't," I whispered, the words tasting like poison. The light in his eyes dimmed again. He took a shaky breath, nodded once, then turned away from me. "Then stop haunting me," he said, his voice breaking. "Stop looking at me like you want me when you've already decided you don't." Before I could answer, he walked away, his figure swallowed by the darkness of the trees. I stood there by the lake, the lantern flickering in my hand, my chest heaving with the weight of everything unsaid. His lips had touched my neck that night, and ever since, I couldn't breathe, not with him, not without him. The days after our meeting by the lake were unbearable. Everywhere I went, I felt his absence like a shadow that clung to me. I'd wake in the middle of the night with my heart pounding, half dreaming that he was beside me again, only to roll over and find nothing but empty sheets. The silence in my cabin was deafening. I tried to convince myself that pushing him away was the right thing to do, that I was protecting him, protecting us both. But every time I saw him from a distance, working in the fields, carrying water buckets, or simply walking along the path with his head lowered, guilt ate away at me. And worse, longing. One evening, the air heavy with the promise of rain, I found myself pacing the cabin like a trapped animal. My lantern flickered weakly against the storm clouds pressing in, and all I could think about was him. His voice. His touch. The way his lips had lingered on my neck that night like they belonged there. By the time the rain began to fall, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my coat, stepped out into the storm, and followed the muddy path down toward his house. The sky split with thunder as I approached, my boots sinking into the soaked earth. His home was dark except for a faint glow from the window. My heart pounded harder with every step. What was I doing? What could I possibly say to him now? That I missed him? That I wanted him, even though I'd told him no? That I was a coward who couldn't stop thinking about him even for a moment? Before I could second-guess myself, I knocked. The door opened slowly, and there he was. His hair was damp, his shirt clinging faintly to his frame, as if he'd been caught in the rain too. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Finally, his voice broke the silence. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed hard. I needed to see you." He let out a humorless laugh, stepping aside so I could enter. "You've made that very clear before. Haven't you had enough of breaking me?" The word stung, but I stepped inside anyway, the warmth of the room enveloping me as the storm howled outside. He shut the door and leaned against it, his arms folded tightly across his chest. I turned toward him, my throat dry. "I can't stop thinking about you," I confessed. His eyes flashed with anger and something deeper, hurt. "Then why do you keep pushing me away?" "Because I don't know how to be with you," I said, my voice cracking. "Because every time I think of what people would say, of what it would mean, I get terrified. But the thought of living without you," my voice faltered. "It's worse." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. "Do you even hear yourself?" he whispered. "You tell me you're scared, you tell me you can't, but then you show up, dripping with rain, saying you can't let me go. Do you have any idea what that does to me?" His voice cracked on the last words, and something inside me broke. I reached out, gripping his arm before I could stop myself. "It does the same to me. You're in my head, in my chest, I can't breathe without you." The tension between us was unbearable, the storm outside matching the storm within. For a second, I thought he might lean in, might kiss me, might end this war with one reckless act. But instead, he tore himself away from my grasp, pacing across the room, his hands shaking. "You don't get it," he said, his voice hoarse. "This isn't just about what people think. If they find out, if they suspect, everything could collapse. For you. For me. For everyone we know." "I know," I whispered. "I know, and I'm still here." He froze mid-step, his back to me. The silence stretched so long I thought I'd lost him again. Then, in a voice so soft I almost missed it, he said, "Then prove it." My pulse thundered. "How?" He turned slowly, his eyes blazing with something raw and desperate. "Stop running. Stop saying you can't. Show me you mean it." The room seemed to shrink, the air between us thick with longing. He wasn't just asking for a kiss or a touch, he was asking for me to choose, to decide once and for all whether I wanted to keep living in fear, or whether I wanted him. I took a step forward. My hand trembled as I reached up, brushing a strand of wet hair from his forehead. His breath hitched, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the same vulnerability I felt. "I want you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I've always wanted you." His lips parted, but no words came out. Instead, he leaned in until our foreheads touched, his breath mingling with mine. The electricity between us was unbearable. And yet, even then, hesitation held me back. Because wanting him was easy. But keeping him? Loving him openly? That was the part that terrified me. I pulled back just slightly, my chest aching. "But what if?" He cut me off, his voice firm, urgent. "Stop asking what if. Start asking what now." The storm raged outside, but in that small room, it was quiet except for the sound of our ragged breathing. I had come here to confess, to break the silence. Instead, I stood at the edge of a choice that could change everything. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I had the strength to make it. The rain pounded harder against the roof, thunder rolling across the sky like a drumbeat to my racing heart. His words echoed in the small room, "Stop asking what if. Start asking what now." It was like a door being flung open inside me. I had spent so long drowning in fear, fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of what this love might cost us. But standing there, so close to him that I could see the quiver in his lips, the shine in his eyes, I realized something: fear hadn't saved me. It had only left me empty. And he was the only thing that made me feel alive. My hand was still trembling where it hovered near his cheek. Slowly, almost painfully, I let it settle against his skin. Warmth spread through my palm, into my arm, through my entire chest. He closed his eyes at the touch, leaning into it with a quiet exhale that made my knees weak. "I don't want to run anymore," I whispered. When his eyes opened again, they burned with something that made my breath catch. Longing, yes. Anger, maybe. But above all, love. Fierce, unyielding, impossible love. He stepped closer, closing the small space between us until our bodies nearly touched. The storm roared outside, but inside the cabin, time seemed to stop. His gaze flicked to my lips, then back to my eyes, as if asking for permission. And this time, I gave it. Our mouths collided with a desperation that had been building for weeks, months, maybe years. It wasn't gentle, not at first, it was hungry, furious, an outlet for every word left unsaid. His hands gripped my shirt like he was afraid I'd disappear again, and mine slid around his waist, pulling him closer, anchoring myself to the only thing that mattered. I could taste the salt of his tears mingling with the rain still clinging to his skin, and it made my heart ache even as it soared. When he broke the kiss, his lips brushed against my cheek, down to the curve of my neck. And then, just like that first night, he pressed them against the hollow of my throat. The sensation sent fire racing through me. My breath hitched, my entire body shuddered. "God," I whispered, clutching at him as if I'd fall apart without his touch. He lingered there, his breath warm against my skin, before lifting his head just enough to whisper, "I thought I lost you." "You almost did," I admitted, my voice hoarse. "But I'm here. I'm yours. If you'll still have me." His laugh was soft, broken, but real. I never stopped. The storm continued to rage, but neither of us cared. We stumbled toward the small bed against the wall, collapsing onto it in a tangle of limbs. The mattress creaked beneath us, the blankets damp from the rain we'd carried in, but none of it mattered. He kissed me again, slower this time, deliberate, as if he wanted to memorize every curve of my lips. I kissed him back with everything I had, pouring weeks of denial and longing into that single moment. His hands traced the line of my shoulders, my back, every touch grounding me, reminding me this was real. And when I pulled back just enough to see his face, I was struck by the raw vulnerability there. The boy who had waited, who had begged, who had nearly walked away, now looking at me as though I was his entire world. "I don't care what they say," I whispered fiercely. "I don't care what it costs. I choose you." Tears welled in his eyes again, but he smiled through them, his forehead pressing against mine. "Then breathe with me. Tonight, just breathe with me." And I did. For the first time in so long, my lungs filled fully, my chest expanding not with fear but with something vast and bright. Hope, love, freedom. Hours slipped by in fragments, kisses, laughter, whispered promises between the crashes of thunder. We held each other like the storm outside couldn't touch us, like the world beyond the cabin didn't exist. At one point, lying with my head against his chest, I whispered, "What if someone finds out?" He ran his fingers through my hair, his voice steady. "Then let them. Let them see what love looks like when it's real." The simplicity of his answer stunned me. All this time, I'd been building cages in my head, walls to keep us hidden. But he didn't want walls. He wanted the world. And for the first time, I wanted it too. By the time dawn broke, the storm had passed. Pale sunlight spilled through the cracks in the shutters, illuminating the room in soft gold. I stirred awake to find him still beside me, his hand loosely draped across my waist, his breathing even and calm. For a moment, I simply watched him, my heart swelling. He looked so peaceful, so beautiful in the morning light, that it made my throat tighten. I pressed a gentle kiss to his temple. He stirred, eyes fluttering open, and when he saw me, he smiled, a smile so tender it nearly undid me. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," I echoed. And just like that, everything felt different. The weight I'd carried for so long was gone. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer ruled me. Love did. That night, when his lips touched my neck, everything changed. I couldn't breathe again, not because of fear, but because for the first time, I finally understood what it meant to be alive. The morning light was soft, but reality was sharp. As we dressed, silence settled between us. It wasn't cold silence anymore, it was heavy with unspoken questions. What happened next? How long could this stay ours alone before the world crept in? I fastened my shirt with clumsy fingers, my heart still raw from the night before. He sat at the edge of the bed, his hair mussed, his gaze fixed on the floorboards. Finally, I broke the quiet. "Are you regretting this?" His head snapped up, eyes wide. "Never. Not for a second." He paused, swallowing hard. "But I'm scared." "Me too," I admitted. "But if last night taught me anything, it's that living without you is worse than anything else I could fear." He smiled faintly, though worry lingered in his expression. "You say that now. But when people start asking questions?" "I'll answer them," I interrupted firmly. "For once, I won't hide." His eyes softened, but doubt still shadowed his features. I reached out, taking his hand in mine. "Let's face it together. Whatever comes." For a while, we tried to cling to the fragile bubble of joy we'd created. Days passed quietly, filled with stolen glances, lingering touches when no one was watching, whispered words at twilight. But the world has a way of noticing what you wish it wouldn't. It began with the smallest things. A neighbor passing us on the path, their gaze lingering a little too long on the closeness of our steps. A question tossed casually at me in town, "You two spend a lot of time together, don't you?" Each comment was innocent on the surface, but it carried an undercurrent. A suspicion. Oh wait. I tried to ignore it. Tried to believe that what we had could remain hidden. But one evening, as we sat by the lake, the truth came crashing in. We'd been laughing about nothing, just the way he skipped stones and how terribly I did it, when the crunch of footsteps startled us. We turned, and there stood one of the elders, his expression unreadable. The laughter died instantly. "Evening," the elder said slowly, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Didn't expect to find the two of you out here together." My throat tightened. "Just enjoying the weather," I muttered, though my pulse thundered. The elder hummed, his gaze flicking between us, sharp and knowing. "Careful," he said finally, his tone carrying more weight than the words themselves. "People might talk." Then he turned and walked away, leaving us rooted to the spot. The silence that followed was suffocating. "He knows," my lover whispered, his face pale. "Maybe not," I said quickly, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. He shook his head, his hands trembling. "It's only a matter of time. And when they find out?" The terror in his eyes gutted me. I reached for him, gripping his shoulders. "Then let them. I won't deny you anymore." "But what if they cast us out?" he asked desperately. "What if they tear everything apart?" "Then we'll build something new," I said, fiercer than I'd ever heard myself. "I'd rather lose the world than lose you again." That night, sleep didn't come. I lay awake, replaying the elder's words, the warning in his tone. The choice was no longer a distant threat, it was closing in on us. At dawn, I made a decision. When I found him later, by the barn, I took his hand openly, in broad daylight. His eyes widened in alarm. "What are you doing?" "Living," I said simply. "With you." "But..." "No more hiding," I insisted. "I want them to see. I want them to know. If it costs me everything else, so be it. You're worth it." He stared at me for a long moment, torn between fear and something brighter. Slowly, tears welled in his eyes, and he nodded. "Then we face it together." And face it we did. By evening, whispers were louder, eyes sharper. People noticed, the way my hand brushed his, the way we stood too close, the way we didn't flinch when caught in each other's gaze. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. A gathering in the town square. Questions disguised as concerns. Voices raised, not in anger yet, but in suspicion, in judgment. "Why are you always with him?" someone demanded. "Is there something you're not telling us?" another pressed. The elder from the lake stepped forward, his eyes cold. "We deserve honesty." My lover's hand trembled in mine. For a heartbeat, I considered lying, retreating back into the safety of denial. But then I remembered his lips on my neck, the way I'd finally felt alive that night. And I couldn't betray that truth. So I lifted my head, my voice steady. "Yes. There is something. I love him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My lover stiffened beside me, then gripped my hand tighter, as if drawing strength from my words. "You can judge me. You can shun me. But you won't take him from me. Not again." For a moment, silence reigned, thick, suffocating. Then came the murmurs, shock, anger, confusion. Some turned away in disgust. Others simply stared, stunned. But amidst the storm of voices, I felt lighter than I ever had before. Because for the first time, I wasn't hiding. For the first time, the world knew, and I didn't care. I turned to him, my chest burning with both fear and love. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." His eyes glistened, his lips trembling into a smile. "Together," he whispered. That night, when his lips touched my neck, I had thought I couldn't breathe again. But standing in front of everyone, hand in hand with him, I realized something. I could breathe. And I finally was. The days that followed were not easy. Whispers trailed us everywhere we went, some sharp as knives, others just curious murmurs. A few friends turned away, unwilling to meet my eyes. But not everyone left. Some stayed, quiet in their acceptance, offering small kindnesses that meant more than words ever could. For the first time, the masks were gone. No more careful distance, no more pretending. We walked side by side in the daylight, fingers brushing without fear, and though the world didn't suddenly grow gentler, I no longer carried the crushing weight of secrecy. He asked me one evening, as the sun painted the sky in bruised gold, "Do you ever regret it? Telling them?" I turned to him, my chest aching with the truth I had carried for so long. "The only regret I have is waiting this long to love you out loud." His hand slipped into mine, warm and steady. Then whatever comes, we'll endure it. The road ahead was uncertain. Judgment would linger. Challenges would rise. But beneath it all, we had built something unshakable, something born in whispers and shadows, now blooming in fragile, unbreakable light. That night when his lips touched my neck, I thought I couldn't breathe again. But now I knew the truth, he hadn't stolen my breath. He had given it back to me. And I was never letting it go. Have you ever felt love so powerful it changed the way you breathed? If this story touched you, don't just scroll, share it with someone who needs to believe in love again. Subscribe for more true romantic stories that will leave your heart racing and your soul glowing.